So yes, as I said, when I was at Alice's place before I worked at Flinders, yes, I had a medical episode. So here it is. This happened actually before I started teaching at Flinders, just before it. I was becoming breathless. It was painful to breathe. Alicia, do you think you could take me to the hospital? I'm having trouble breathing. In casualty, they tried to send me away with Panadol. I wasn't having that. No, I've been on that all day and I'm finished with that stuff. I'll give you something stronger then, they said at the Royal Adelaide Hospital. They gave me Panadine. Back to Alicia's house. I got worse quite suddenly, gasping. Alicia can't breathe. Kenny will take you back to the hospital. Kenny and Maria delivered me to casualty. Do you want me to do this or will you do it? The nurse said. I grasped the huge pear-shaped tablet and inspected it closely. I didn't know what it was, but I intuited that it was a suppository. And I didn't know what that was either. I'd heard other people talking about them, but I'd never used one before. I thought a suppository was supposed to block you up and prevent diarrhea, wasn't it? I looked at it again and hesitated. The nurse repeated, Are you going to do this, or am I? She was humorless and solemn. I'll do it myself, I said. It was quite easy, really. I thought to myself, here I am in agony, can't breathe, and all they're worried about is if I'm going to shit all over the floor. Maria later told me that this was wrong. My knowledge of the functions of a suppository was apparently inaccurate. According to her, they dissolve and are absorbed and can be used for many ailments. I thought they were just to constipate the colon so that you didn't have diarrhea. Hello, Mr. Nixon. This is Dr. X. I could dimly see above me a CAT scan of my lungs. I was lying on my back. Mr. Nixon, you are in casualty at the RAH and you've had a pulmonary embolism. In fact, several. Can you see them? He looked like a teddy bear, but he didn't sound friendly or congenial at all. In fact, he sounded like Big Brother in George Orwell's 1984. Like everyone else around me, the doctor looked about the same age as my sons. I groaned. I could see the embolisms in my lungs. What did he want me to do? Introduce myself and talk to the bloody things, or what? We are going to admit you now. Have your bowels moved at all? The bloke opposite me he'd had a major operation to remove his lymph nodes under his arm. He was drugged, groggy, but good-humoured in spite of the pain. He paused. Not for a few days, he said innocently. The nurse seemed happy at this news. Oh, well, I think we'll have to give you an enema then, she said cheerily. He realized his mistake, but continued to be amiable, like all Aussie males are expected to do in such circumstances. Well, no, I think not, he said casually. I'm just nervous and I haven't eaten for a few days. I think that's why. He was lucky. She went away to check with the doctor. I took careful note of this conversation. When the nurse came to me, she said, Mr. Nixon, date of birth, 1407, 1952. I was waiting for her to ask me for the number of my mobile. Everybody seems to do that these days. It seems to be a marker of one's identity. just as important as your name. But she didn't ask me for my mobile number. Instead, she said, "And have you moved your bowels today?" "Yes," I lied. "Twice." "Good." I was in hospital for 10 days and I only did a dump once. As my good friend Len used to say, sometimes in life, Don, you will need guile. "Good morning, Peter," said a polite voice with an Australian accent on Skype. "G'day, Charles," drawled his respondent, Peter. "Yes, yes, I can do that." "Yes, Charles, I can get you stuff for 20 million, but I need 2 weeks. Is that okay?" Pause. "Yes, Charles, no problem. I need 2 weeks. Is that okay?" It was the middle of the night in the Royal Adelaide Hospital thorax ward. I'd been admitted 2 nights previously with breathlessness. The previous night, Peter, in the opposite corner of the little ward, had been stretchered in from emergency with some balance disorder which was causing him to throw up violently. "Yes, Charles," Peter repeated evenly. "I need 2 weeks to get you the 20 million. At this time of the night? Drugs? Arms deal?" I pretended to be asleep. "Well, Charles," Peter drawled in his gravelly voice, "I'm in an awkward place at the minute, you see. I have no income. But if you give me 2 weeks, I will have the 20 million for you." I was concerned that Charles Muscle was going to arrive in the ward at any moment, and I was going to be part of the collateral damage. There would be no witnesses. They were all asleep. Nothing happened, and I eventually fell back to sleep. The next night, Robert was stretchered into the bed beside me. He'd had a stroke while visiting his GP. I could hear a young nurse's voice whispering urgently to him, "What is your name? Where are we, Robert? Do you know the name of the Australian Prime Minister?" What silly questions. Was I cracking up? Or was this some sort of game show? The voice sounded just like my own daughter's. I became convinced that my daughter was in the next cubicle with Robert. "Nurse, nurse," I said. "Yeah," said a male nurse. "Can you just check if my daughter is next door? I think she may have come to visit me and gone to the wrong cubicle." "What is your name? Who is the Prime Minister of this country?" Now the nurse thought I was a problem. My daughter had been telling me how well she had done recently in her Australian studies at school. I thought she had flipped and was being entertained by Robert in the next cubicle. "Nurse, nurse, please check." "No, I've already checked, mate. It's one of our staff. It's not your daughter." "But nurse, please, can you check just once more? I'm sure," I heard her voice again. "Now look, mate," said the nurse. He was irritated now, even angry. "I'm beginning to get worried about you. You got a lot of narcotics in you, mate. Your daughter is not next door." A few minutes later, a female nurse came to see me. She was about 40. She smiled. It was me who was next door. Routine procedure for a new arrival. I have to ask the patient, who is the Prime Minister? Next morning, Peter looked a mess. He was washed out and exhausted, completely dishevelled. He was the Speaker of the South Australian Parliament. Robert was an old money conservative from a well-heeled Adelaide family. He told me his life story later. It wasn't particularly interesting, full of the usual good luck stories told by Aussie males to each other about how people had been queuing up to offer him a job when he left school and then when he left university, etc. They didn't impress me. I'd heard them so many times before. Not what I wanted to hear when the only queue I was in was for the dole. He'd had a dissolute but very enjoyable life, and I reckon Robert hadn't done a day's real work in his life. A former politician, he was now a government accountant. The two of them knew each other, and they were old political rivals. Peter was Labour, and Robert a Conservative. Together they were hilarious. Aussies are so verbally articulate and witty when they banter. The two of them were a real laugh. I could never have been humorous in their situation. My landlady's boyfriend is called Kenny. I don't know what he does. He speaks no English. He just was outside using a pneumatic drill all the time, laying down tiles on Alicia's patio. They'd had one spectacular row, but Kenny came running back like Tuya, the desexed dog. Actually, Tuya is in the doghouse at present. He's been blamed for pooing in the shower, and he's been sent back to puppy school for retraining. Poor Tuya. There'll be a lot of jargon at puppy dog retraining school. Maybe for dogs it's not so bad as I think it is for humans. Alicia told me she thinks it's Chili, the Chihuahua, who's the real culprit. Alicia is a formidable lady, but she smiles and is very polite. And she doesn't wear black. I could never imagine her in black. That's the thing about Asian females. They don't wear black. They don't need to. They are slimmer than Aussie females. STIP. STIP. Stay in the present. I read somewhere. Damn good advice. That's how I survived Brunei for 9 years. Stay in the present. I would say to myself the night before term started as I went to sleep after taking my Xanax. It worked. I survived, didn't I? What has Kenny got to do with all this? I don't really know. I like it when they argue away in Chinese and I don't understand a word they're saying. Maybe Kenny feels like Tuya. I mean, that Alicia is a formidable lady. But no, I don't think so. Alicia often has a big smile on her face. The noisy night is over in the ward and the morning arrives. Hospital wards are active at night. People constantly need painkillers and drugs. Have you heard the news? Says Robert animatedly. The rising intonation is correct. We perk up expectantly. I went back to bloody sleep, he said with perfect falling intonation. Peter Lewis began to chuckle. He had a slow, gravelly voice. You know, the Conservative Party needs someone like you with a lime left wing, he drawled. His lime left wing was referring to Robert's left arm, which had been paralyzed with a stroke. I laughed out loud, and it hurt my lungs. God, they were funny, these two. The first night, I awoke at 3 a.m. in agony. The painkillers had worn off. I couldn't breathe. Stood up. No good. I sat down again. No good. Then I crouched on the bed, supporting myself by holding the bed with one arm. This was the only pain-free position I could adopt. Please, nurse, can I have some painkillers? How many have you had? But I don't know. You should know, I thought to myself. You've written them down. Give me the strong ones, I squeaked. Oxycodones. There was a bit of toing and froing with the charts and confusion, and they didn't know what I'd had. Sit on the bed, falling intonation, said the nurse, like the matron in Faulty Towers. Sit on the bed. I couldn't move, as I was in the only pain-free position on the entire planet as far as I was concerned. I can't. Sit on the bed, she repeated. I can't. I'm in pain. Duh. Saying duh required an exhalation of breath, which hurt me even more, but it was worth it. No need to be rude. I'm only a student. She flounced back to her den. She was an Aussie wearing black. They gave me Panadine and left me standing there, clutching the bed. I was glued to the bed like Dante's thinker, and for half an hour until the painkiller took effect. Next night I was confused again. I heard Robert next door in real distress. He was throwing up all over the place, and from what I could hear, he was actually on the floor with his head on the ground. The hospital staff wanted him to get back into bed, but he knew that if he lifted his head, he would throw up. We need you to get back into bed so we can inject you. I can't, he groaned. I'll throw up. No, you won't. You'll feel better. No, I won't. I'll bloody throw up. How the hell would you know anyway? You're not the one who's bloody sick. I need you to give me the back of your hand. The Speaker of the House groaned, retched, and threw up violently. Next morning I glanced to my left. Robert was fine, but Peter, in the opposite corner, looked like death warmed up. It was Peter who'd been sick in the night. He'd been able to crawl across the floor almost as far as my bed before the nurses intercepted him. Not very dignified for the Speaker of the House. Not to worry. I think Peter's reputation will remain intact, as I'm the only one who'll ever remember this incident. Unless somebody reads this someday and then meets Peter Lewis.